All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Alison Flowers. Alison is an award-winning investigative journalist and the author of the new book, Exoneree Diaries, The Fight for Innocence, Independence, and Identity, which you can find at AlisonFlowers.com. Alison, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so Alison, in the intro of the book, you actually describe how the word exoneree doesn't actually exist in most dictionaries. Let's discuss that and how that word, how it's so odd that word actually doesn't even exist.
Yeah, I realized this as I started looking into the lives of exonerees. I was working for an innocence project investigating potentially wrongful murder convictions. And it occurred to me one day that, while we were doing really good work to try and free the innocent from prison, this question was in my mind that what happens when the innocent are freed? And I realized that there were just these huge gaps in the system for caring for them. And not only that, but there wasn't even a word for this completely forgotten community. We of course have the word to exonerate, the verb, we have exoneration, we have exonerated, but we don't have a word for the person leaving prison innocent of the crimes that sent them there. And, there's been no movement on that in the last 3.5 years since I've been working on this, but maybe by putting it in the title of my book, it can actually become a word.
Yeah, that's nice. I think you might be onto something there. So let's dig into some exoneration and exoneree statistics before we dig into the actual people that you profile in your book. Just give us some, because I think exoneration happens, on average every 3 days in the U.S., correct? Give us some statistics on how much it actually occurs.
Yeah, so exonerations have increased exponentially over the last couple of years. And, there may be a couple of reasons for that. We're more aware now of the flaws in the criminal justice system that contribute to wrongful convictions. So it could be that more people are being exonerated, but not necessarily more people are being wrongfully convicted. Exonerations haven't been tracked for very long. Only in the last couple of years, there's a great project out of the University of Michigan called the National Registry of Exonerations. And that project has been tracking exonerations since 1989. So that's about as far back as it can go. The number right now is almost 1,800 exonerations. Not all of those are happening in real time. There's no system to find out if a case has been overturned. So the people at the Exoneration Registry are basically going back through news clips and accounts and trying to figure it out from there, tips from lawyers, that sort of thing. So that's how they're constructing the Exoneration Registry. But there's no, alert that goes out, once someone's case is overturned. So that means that we've lost a lot of people over the years who should probably be in the registry, but are not. But right now we have about 1,800. And the benefit of that, of course, is that then you can study the exonerations. Once you know what the cases are, who the people are, you can go back and look at the contributing factors to those exonerations to see why these people were wrongfully convicted in the first place. And of course, we see the sorts of things that you would expect to see. I wrote my book in Chicago, where most of the action takes place and almost all the exonerees live or were convicted. And here in Cook County, it is the wrongful conviction capital of the country, topping the list right now at 123 exonerations. Harris County in Texas is pretty close behind at 118 exonerations. And when you break those down, Illinois has 160 exonerations. So Cook County accounts for most of those. But when you break down the exonerations in Illinois, it's 85% minority. I haven't looked at the trend nationwide, but that I'm guessing would hold very much true. And so you can kind of see the contributing factors, what went into the wrongful convictions. For example, more than half of exonerations had some sort of official misconduct involved as a contributing factor to why that person was wrongfully convicted. And that's very serious. Of course, we know all about police misconduct in the news these days, especially in Chicago. I work at the Invisible Institute, where we have the Citizens Police Database, which is the largest online database to look at police misconduct. And our analysis shows that about 97% of police misconduct goes completely undisciplined. And so when you think about the tie between that and wrongful convictions, and knowing that these people were exonerated where more than half of their cases involve some sort of official misconduct, that's very serious when it comes to taking a closer look at flaws in the criminal justice system, beginning with when police start investigating a case. And then, a quarter of these cases involve some sort of false or misleading forensics where, the science was just wrong, or they were looking at it the wrong way. Arson science is an example where, that field has really grown. Our understanding of that has grown. And so what used to look like arson to experts no longer does, and has been completely debunked. So the leading cause of wrongful convictions from the exonerations that we can study is actually false accusation or perjury. So that's simply when someone is making a false claim against you in court. They're testifying against you. Oftentimes they're incentivized by getting a break on their own case with some sort of plea deal. And so that accounts for, right now, 56% of known exonerations had a false accusation involved in that case.
Wow, it's staggering. Another stat that you have in the book is the Innocence Project actually had an estimate that it's somewhere between 2.3 and 5% of the people currently in jail did not commit their crimes. And we could actually, this is not this conversation, but obviously we could have a bigger conversation about other percent, how many of them should actually be in jail, especially for insanely long sentences that they're having. But still, when you're talking between 2.3 and 5%, just that alone, and then we could get bigger, but you're talking tens of thousands of people in jail who did not commit the crimes that they were convicted of.
Right. It's absolutely baffling. And I feel in my gut that it's higher than that.
Yeah.
And that comes from talking to these exonerees who spent collectively, the 4 exonerees in my book, collectively spent 80 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. During that time, they got to know a lot of people. And they firmly believe, knowing, of course, people in prison who were guilty of the crime and others who weren't, they believe that statistic should be much higher. But even if it is what it is, that's hundreds of thousands of people in this country who are innocent and are nonetheless spending time in prison. Here in Illinois, that would probably be about close to 1,500 people. And so it's something that should definitely be looked at more closely. And thanks to great Innocence projects, Innocence Network, and the Exoneration Registry, we can see what policy decisions need to be made in order to try and fix some of these errors. And then, of course, there's the larger point that what does this say about our criminal justice system altogether, right, and mass incarceration altogether? One thing that was really important to me in the book, while I am highlighting the cases and the stories of 4 innocent people, mass incarceration takes many prisoners, families, communities, not just the people who are actually serving time. And there are several characters in the book, by way of telling these exoneree stories, who, sure, committed the crime that sent them to prison. But when you look at the massive injustices that occur in the prison system, it hardly seems like a fair system, whether you're innocent or guilty.